So I just made the upgrade from the iPhone 14 Pro Max. I asked in last week's video if people would rather see a what's on my phone video or an iPhone 14 Pro review. It seemed like the general consensus was for an updated what's on my phone video. It's been quite some time since I did one of those, so that is what we're doing today. I'm also going to give some quick thoughts on the new phone at the end of the video, so if you want to see a bit of a mini review, stick around for that, but otherwise let's just dive right into it. Starting off with the lock screen, I've got a pretty basic setup here, just the normal date and time, and I did add a few new widgets with the new iOS 16 update. I've got a temperature widget, activity rings widget, and a phone battery widget. Getting in my home screen, I've always been a huge fan of just a really simple and minimal look, and with the new addition of the dynamic island, the notifications for the shortcuts and the shortcut app icons is much less annoying, so I finally made the switch over to a custom icon pack. This was from Nate Wren Designs, I believe. I'll put a link in the description below for it. No affiliation or anything. I just found it when I was browsing for myself. A ton of good icons on there. I love the flat minimal design and look of this. There are a few steps to achieve this look. It's relatively simple, but just with a few different pieces involved. Obviously, one being the custom icon packs, but two, the central location of the 8 icons. Because they don't have blank widgets that are single spaces, I'm actually using a website bookmark that is a black background. So I just have, fake bookmarks all the way around the edges of the phone here. If you also notice, I was able to hide the dock background. This was done just with a simple custom background that I made in Illustrator. Essentially, I took the color of the dock and a black background and just set a gradient for it to flow naturally. I think it looks really nice and clean. I've been so happy with this setup. I actually had it in my last what's on my iPhone video, but adding the icons now I think just takes it to another level. But before we get into the apps, I'm going to swipe over here and show you some widgets that I keep on the side panel here. I just have the default calendar, weather, and maps app. Below that, I have a temperature app for my temperature sensor that I use for backpacking. It's from a company called NW Home. The thing was like $12. It weighs about 20 grams. I keep it in my pack when I'm backpacking. It's really, really helpful and useful for anyone that does any sort of outdoor adventures and you're wanting to make sure that you're covered and prepared for temperatures. It's a good way to test gear and kind of figure out what the temperatures are that you're in when you're out in the backcountry. Next to that, I just have the default battery icon, a simple Coinbase widget to keep track of a few different cryptocurrencies. So getting into the home screen, I keep 2 different pages. One is kind of my main daily use page, and then the secondary one is a little bit more focused for my backpacking and some kind of alternative extra things depending, and that'll rotate a bit depending on what I'm using. But starting from top to bottom here, I have YouTube Studio and YouTube. YouTube Studio is just where I keep and answer all the comments from all of you, keep track of the channel metrics, everything like that. And YouTube, obviously, you know that. I have the stock Notes app below that. I am a huge fan and user of the Notes app. I'm not a big pen and paper guy in my EDC. If you all watch those, I lean heavily on the Notes app. Next to that, I've got Reddit. Definitely more of a lurker, but just about the only social media I'm using these days. And then I have Spotify and Pocket Casts. Spotify is definitely superior, in my opinion, to Apple Music. Just about the only Apple product I am just absolutely not a fan of. I don't like the UI. Spotify is just better in every way in my experience. For podcasts, I use Pocket Casts. I've been using this app for years. It's definitely my podcasting app of choice. So much better than the default Apple app, and I prefer this to Overcast and a lot of other popular options. I'm not going to go over all of my podcasts here, but I'll cover some of my favorites that I keep up with. There's a Detroit morning radio show called Mojo in the Morning that I listen to. It just helps me keep in touch and connected to my hometown. I listen to Ear Biscuits from Rhett and Linkaton, the It's Always Sunny podcast, Dispatches from Myrtle Beach, Link's new podcast from Rhett and Link. I also always keep up with Office Ladies, and I listen to a ton of different backpacking podcasts. My favorite for quite some time now is the Backpacking Podcast. It's Jeremiah Stringer and John Kelly. They're both small YouTubers in the backpacking space. Huge fan of those guys. Check out that podcast if you have any interest in, learning more about backpacking. But that's about it. Not going to bore you with the entire list. Below that, I have my email client. You all might remember I had a sponsor months and months back, I think at the beginning of the year, called Superhuman. I've been using it since they sponsored that video at the beginning of the year, and it is incredible. I really love it. It's all focused around clearing your inbox out. You get kind of an inbox streak notification for how many weeks you're able to keep inbox zero. It's designed and functions so well. I don't think I could ever go back to any sort of normal email client after getting used to Superhuman. Next to that, my browser is just the default Safari. Works perfectly for me. It connects well with my Mac and everything too. I just love the continuity crossover aspects of using the same browser. At the very bottom, my phone and messages, self-explanatory. So swiping over to the next page, these are a few apps. I mostly use these for backpacking and camping and just some auxiliary apps that I'm currently using and enjoying. So at the very top here, I have the Apple Books app and the Kindle app. Two different reading apps because my home book library that's DRM free. I use the Apple Books app for that and load them in from my computer. And then I have the Kindle app because I rent a lot of books from Libby, which is like a free library service. I would definitely recommend that if you haven't heard of it. I actually got recommended from all of you years ago, so thank you for that. Below there, I have Google Maps. I'm slowly being converted into a Google Maps user. I defended Apple Maps for quite some time, but for road trips and backcountry stuff, Google Maps is far superior, with the biggest thing being able to download offline maps. Can't do that in Apple Maps, and this just works so much better for me for a lot of my road trips where I'm usually out of service for hours and hours of driving. Next to that, I have my Garmin app just for messaging on my Garmin InReach, although that may be changing now with the satellite connectivity coming to the 14 Pro. In the next row, I've got an app called Air Now. This is a way to track air quality. Wildfire season in the West, it can be really difficult to find places to backpack with smoke problems from wildfires. So this is something I keep an eye on diligently and check quite often when I'm planning backpacking trips. A necessary evil, unfortunately, as the West continues to burn more and more every year. Next up though, I have AllTrails. This is my backpacking and hiking app of choice. Huge fan of the layout and UI and service. You can download offload maps. I've tried Gaia, I've tried Onyx. I'm not opposed to other navigation apps, but that is the current favorite. Next up, we've got the mindfulness.com app, and they are actually the sponsor of this week's video, so huge thanks to them for helping support the channel and for making such an awesome app. The mindfulness.com app has a ton of tools focused around meditation and mindful living. I've been using it for the past 4 or 5 months and have really enjoyed the meditation courses that they have available. You can pick different focus areas like relieving stress, reducing anxiety. It's incredibly helpful to be able to have that tailoring, but you can also tailor the length. Sometimes I only have a few minutes, so you can pick a 5-minute meditation session or a 30-minute one. The overall quality of the sessions has truly blown me away, and it's what's kept me coming back to the app to continue my meditation practices. On top of the meditation, they also have courses available with finding inner peace and dealing with illness and pain, mindful eating, tons of high production multi-part series available. All of the hosts in my experience have been great and nice to listen to. If you're interested in checking it out, you can use code JoshFenn for a 30% discount on an annual membership. Definitely check it out if you're interested in meditation or mindfulness. It's been a huge help for me. Huge thanks to the mindfulness.com app again for sponsoring this week's video. The last and final app on the home screen here is OfferUp. I've been selling a ton of stuff on there lately, so it's earned a spot on the home screen. Not my favorite, to be honest, but a little bit better than Craigslist and definitely better than Facebook Marketplace. So I've covered the home screen apps, getting into the app library. This is something that still annoys me. I really wish you could categorize and rename these categories yourself, because they're nonsense in my opinion for the apps that I use. But regardless of that, I'm going to cover some of my favorites or any standouts here, so I'm not covering everything and boring people to death. Productivity category. Butterfly MX is a key service to get into my apartment building. I've got the Wave app for my invoicing for my videography business. Really excellent if you're a freelancer and want a good invoicing service. It's all online and completely free, so I highly recommend that. I've got Superhuman, that was the email client on the homepage. Surfshark, definitely my favorite VPN that I've used, and TeamViewer. It's a really good way to access any of your computers remotely if you're on the go a lot, especially if you're traveling, having some way to access your home computers is incredibly useful. Next category here, information and reading. A few things we already covered. Audible, I've got the Books app. Libby was that library app. Definitely check that out if you're interested in being able to check out some free books. Pocket Casts, Reddit, Song Sleuth. So this is an app where you can identify bird sounds. With all of my camping, I love trying to figure out what the different birds are. So this is a way you can actually record and listen. It has an archive of all the different bird sounds. So you can kind of cross-reference, and you can technically have it listen to the bird and it'll try and search using the sound, but that hasn't worked that well for me, but it's great to be able to have that archive. If you're into like birding stuff, I'm not huge into that, but I like my monocular and being able to find out what birds are what when I'm out in the backcountry. The Translate app, stock weather app, nothing too exciting there. Getting into the utilities, I'm gonna skip over some of the boring stuff. I've got the headphones app for my Sony Link Buds, the Apple Home app, it's how I control all the lights in my studio here. Parcel Pending, that's a package service, locker system for my apartment building. Plex Dash is how I monitor my Plex servers. Safari settings, Sidus Link is the way to control my aperture lights. The BenQ Smart Control, it controls that BenQ portable projector that I use and I've talked about a bunch of times. Getting into creativity, pretty light and minimal here. I mostly use the stock camera app for most everything, but I'm always trying and testing different things. Double Take lets you record 2 of the phone camera angles at once. Super interesting. Filmic Pro if you want manual camera control for your video. It's been a while since I've used that, but it's really helpful when you need it. Halide, I actually just heard about this from Tyler Stallman. I haven't actually tested or used it before. Icons is the app I used to get the blank background for the custom app icons that I used. I think it might have been a couple of bucks to buy. I honestly can't remember, but super useful, helpful, worked perfectly. Imaging Edge is the Sony camera app to control my cameras. Lightroom, Photos, Pro Take, and YouTube Studio. Pretty standard stuff there. I haven't really been using social media for the past several years. I have Snapchat because I send videos of my cat back and forth with my wife, even when we're home in the same apartment. And then I do use Reddit, but I'm mostly just like browsing, lurking on Reddit. Discord is essentially just replaced the group chat for my old friend group back in Michigan. Other than that, FaceTime, Google Meet for Android video calls, messages, phone, Snapchat. Not much else in there. And then the health and fitness category, AllTrails, Apple Fitness. GoodRx is a way to get discounts on prescriptions if you don't have health insurance. I've been without health insurance for several years as I've built up my business, so that's been a way to get some stuff for a little bit cheaper. The Apple Health app. K-Health is a virtual telehealth option. Again, if you don't have health insurance, it's a great way to talk to a doctor if you need to, for very little money. We've got the mindfulness.com app we already talked about, and Weight Diary. I've actually tracked my weight for 7 or so years now daily. As I was losing weight, I started to track my weight on a daily basis just to keep accountability. Huge fan and advocate of doing that. I know it's not for everyone, but it's worked really well for me. Next category is games. I've got a ton on here. Usually when I get a new phone, I will add a ton of different games because I'm just using and messing around with my phone. So not all of these are regular use games for me, but I'll highlight a few of my favorites here. I've been playing a ton of this app called Sping. It's an Apple Arcade game. I usually sign up for it again when I get a new phone just to mess around and try different ones. Skate City is another great Apple Arcade app. Mini Metro is a great game. Game Dev Story is a favorite of mine. Kingdom Rush is excellent. Alto's Adventure. Just a few of my favorites. Pocket City is another one that I really like, but other than that, I'm not playing too many games right now, but I like to have these on here for flights and traveling and stuff. Shopping and food. I have an app called Parcel that I use to track packages. This has been a great addition to my phone from a couple of years ago now. I manage a lot of packages with doing YouTube, so this is just a great way to aggregate all of the tracking numbers and information. Super useful and helpful. I think it's $5 for a year subscription to it. Well worth it in my experience if you get a lot of packages shipped to you. Apple Store app. I have Burger King and McDonald's for road trips. It's really the only time I ever eat fast food, but it's great to get free stuff and coupons and stuff like that. eBay app, OfferUp, both for reselling. Yelp and the Safeway app. That's where I do a lot of my grocery shopping. Moving into entertainment, Game Pass, Xbox app, self-explanatory there. Music League is kind of like a fantasy league for picking music. My friends and I all have a Music League tournament going. We've been doing it for a couple of years now. It's a ton of fun. Check into it if you've never heard of it. Netflix, Next Episode is where I keep track of all of the TV show releases for what I watch when it's coming out. Really helpful and useful free service as well. Plex, I have a home media server, so this is where I keep all of my home media. Loads in metadata and makes things a lot nicer, so you're not just looking at, file lists on a computer. Spotify and YouTube. Finance, I've got Coinbase, Venmo, Cash App, a few different apps for my credit cards and bank. Nothing too exciting there. Navigation, I've got the Garmin app, which I use for messaging on my inReach. I've got an app called Far Out, which is used for a lot of longer hiking and backpacking trails. I do a lot of section hikes of the PCT as well as the Timberline Trail here in Oregon, so I downloaded that and use that pretty often. It's great to see trip reports and water reports for different areas. Just really useful if you go on any longer hikes. Google Maps, Apple Maps, nothing exciting there. Below that, the other category, I've got Lark. The Lark app's for my Lark Pitcher. I've been using that thing since they sponsored and sent that out to me over a year ago. Buy my own filters and stuff now. I really love it. Parking Kitty is a way to pay for parking in the city here in Portland. And then last in the other category, Philips Hue app to control the lighting in the studio. Under travel, I've got Airbnb, a few different scooter apps, Bird, Lime, all that sort of stuff. Delta app, Hotel Tonight's a really great way to get last minute hotel deals on things. If you've never used it before, definitely would recommend it. iOverlander is a great way to find backcountry campsites if you do a lot of backcountry car camping. PNW National Forest, it's just National Forest map app for the Pacific Northwest. Next is RoadCam, super useful if you're trying to plan road trips, especially through the mountains when you don't know the conditions. You're able to pull up live feeds of, road cameras all over Oregon and the Pacific Northwest at least. I'm not sure how far this spans, but really useful for me for trip planning. Skiplagged is a really great way to get some deals on flight tickets. Sometimes, you can jump out on a layover and the ticket's cheaper going somewhere else with a connecting flight. Not going to get all into that right now, but check into that if you want to see some deals. But that is everything on my phone. I've gotten so many people wanting this video for the past couple of years since I haven't done one in quite some time. My phone setup's pretty boring, but I like not being bothered by it, and I don't have a lot of notifications set up. I don't have a lot of home screen apps. I like the simple design. I want to have it as a tool, and I don't want to have it cluttering my mind or getting in the way of things. Quick few thoughts on the iPhone 14 Pro Max for those of you that are interested. Coming from the 12 Pro Max, so use that for context on what I'm talking about. The 120 hertz display has been incredible and honestly an even bigger deal than I expected it to. So really like that. The dynamic island is really nice. Definitely not a deal breaker or a reason to get the phone, but just a really clean design and functional design. Been really happy with it despite a few bugs that iOS 16 still seems to have around the dynamic island. Battery life on this has been a little disappointing if I'm being honest. It's better than my 12 Pro Max, don't get me wrong, but it's just not the giant leap I was expecting looking at the different specs on the Apple website. Really hoping some future software updates get that fixed. I'd love to have a solid 2-day battery life on this like I expected. It might just be from overuse getting the new phone, but it's been draining just a little bit faster than anticipated. The cameras have been amazing, a significant improvement from my 12 Pro Max, which was already great. Been out on a couple of backpacking trips to test and try some things out. The ProRes video works really great. The new 48 megapixel camera works great. But the biggest thing, the ultra wide and the telephoto lenses have improved so much since the iPhone 12. So overall, I've been really pleased with it and just hope there are some improvements for that battery life down the road. But that's going to wrap it up for the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know if you have any favorite apps, must-have apps on your phone that people may not have heard of. Get that discussion going. But otherwise, I'll talk to you in the next one.